Good morning, I'm Megan, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about neutral seat bones. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why it's important to have neutral seat bones and how to find whether or not you have neutral seat bones. So why is it important to have neutral seat bones? Well, it has a lot more to do with balance and the rider's stability, but also how you are feeling the horse and receiving information underneath of you, but also how your horse is receiving information from yourself. And it could be everything from just feeling balanced and level on a circle and not necessarily that falling in feeling. It could also be the difference between your horse getting a very accurate change when you're working on the flying changes. Sometimes as riders we can be very one-sided, so that has a lot to do with what we're going to talk about. But how we articulate our pelvis when we're in the saddle has a lot of impression on what happens with the horse. So we're going to delve into that just a little bit more. How do you find neutral seat bones? First, you have to find your seat bones and know what they feel like. So they're the two bony parts that you might feel poking down through your flesh when you're sitting in the saddle. They also might be the things that get a little sore after you ride sometimes. How do you find them? If you can have somebody hold your horse, this is not ideal to take both hands off the rein, but if you can have somebody either hold your horse, or if your horse is really good at standing, park yourself in front of a mirror or have a friend help you with this. Stand still. Take both of your hands or just one of your hands and sit on it. And I want you to feel the bony part that pokes down through your flesh. What you might notice is that it's quite round on the bottom side, and you can get it to glide around very easily on top of your hands. So it's kind of like a ball bearing. And next, I want you to imagine that it's a flashlight or like an LED laser light that's shining straight down underneath of your horse. Rocky, stop. And if you imagine these flashlights aiming straight down underneath your horse's belly, I want you to determine or try to figure out whether or not they are aimed straight down or towards your horse's front legs or towards your horse's hind legs. And notice that I just changed my pelvis when I did that. In neutral spine, you want those flashlights to aim straight down. If you have more of a tucked or rounded back pelvis like this, maybe I'm sitting a little bit more in my pockets, my seat bones have gone from straight down and they're now aimed a little bit forward on the bottom side. So if I had little flashlights on the bottom of my seat bones, they would be lighting up this horse's front feet. Now, we also see another body type. So if I were back in neutral and I hollowed my back, meaning that I dropped the front of my pelvis or my pubic bone down, good boy, you're being very patient. I would have quite a hollow space here behind my back, and I would really feel quite a bit of pressure on the front of my pubic bone, right where the swell of the saddle starts to come up. My seat bones are now aimed back towards the horse's hind legs. And I see both types of hollow-backed riders, and I see round-back type riders as far as the seat bones go. And how do we fix that? If you had a rider, if you are, or you determine that you are a rider that's a little bit more round-backed and sitting on your pockets, there's a lot of weight that is sitting down here in the flesh behind your seat bones, and you're really angled forward, and chances are you're really not sitting on your sit bones, you're sitting more on your gluteal muscles, which is your bum. So how do you fix that? You're going to want to take your pelvis and you're going to tip it forward, and I want those riders to feel a little bit more like your pubic bone does go down. So that's going to put you a little bit more in the middle of neutral spine or neutral seat bones. If you were a pubic bone down, hollow-backed rider, I'm really trying hard to arch my back here. This is a little bit more, I see this more often in riders. And what you want to do is take the muscles from the bottom of your pubic bone and your belly button. Take your hand right like this on the front side of you. And you want to, Jackie, if you want to go just to the front, just a little bit. I want, for those riders, you're kind of dropped and your pubic bone is really down. You want to knit together these muscles and shorten these muscles, pulling them together, which pulls up your pubic bone. And it, let's see if we can get the angle again. You're shortening these muscles and you're stretching these muscles down so that you get back into a neutral spine. Why is this important? Well, when you start riding, and maybe you have a horse that, or your tendency is to go down to your pubic bone, you might start to feel like your horse is constantly yanking you forward, and you get quite a bit of airspace underneath your bum. Well, we want to stay a little bit more plugged in and centrally located in the saddle so that you're not being unseated and that you're less movable. So if you practice this at home, it's actually going to be probably difficult for some of you if your muscles aren't used to doing this and you're this type of rider. The amount of engagement that it's going to take you to stay a little bit shorter from this section to this section is probably going to also make this part of you a little bit more fatigued. And I would say keep practicing that, but this makes you a much more organized rider. You will sit better because there is more evenly distributed weight happening now in the saddle. Let me just step up here into the light again. When you start riding things like leg yields, doing any kind of lateral work, it becomes very important that you are in neutral spine this way. But there's a secondary part of this. I may kind of branch out into another video, but it has a lot more to do with this kind of levelness. So we just addressed this kind of levelness, but now we have this levelness to think about as well. And as an exercise for any rider that's having a little bit of trouble, maybe you do sit fairly level and maybe you found neutral spine, or you can use this exercise we're talking about to find it. Now, if you go out and you ride on a circle and just practice, I want you to think about how even you are on both seat bones, and that each seat bone is on either side of the horse's spine. This is really the very beginning of keeping a rider centrally balanced over the horse's midline, but also the movement from side to side. Sometimes when riders do leg yields, this is a very common thing. They will often lean to the inside as they put the new inside leg on, and they don't stay up over the top of the horse, and we end up with a bulging horse in the direction we're leg yielding. Sometimes in a flying change, riders do this quite a bit and they launch forward. All of those things are great ways or great maneuvers to really practice this level seat bone, but also neutral spine. And if you go out and you just ride a circle, see how much of you can stay 50% on one side of the spine, 50% on the left side of the spine. And see if you can just think about how even you are, and notice if your horse is different. Notice if your horse all of a sudden starts to maybe stretch or feel a little bit more relaxed, or maybe you feel more stable, a little bit more confident in the saddle because you're not wiggling around quite as much as you were. And I'm going to address some other things, but this is a really good one. Sit in front of a mirror or have a friend with a camera and determine, are you a hollow-backed rider or a round-backed rider? And see if you can find neutral spine. Another way of thinking about this neutral spine is imagine that you're sitting on a triangle and that your pubic bone is the front part of that triangle in the front. And I think we're out of our sunbeam over here. There we go. Okay, so the pubic bone, this part, you're sitting on the front part of a triangle. And your two sit bones, the bony parts that are poking down through your flesh, are the back two widest part of the triangle. And try to figure out if you sit closer to the front of that triangle, meaning the pubic bone down, Or if you sit more towards the back two corners of that triangle, and see if you can get closer to the middle or the back two corners, depending on what body type. If you're more of a pubic bone down rider, we want you to get a little bit more towards the middle, if not the back two corners. We want more of your flesh sitting in the saddle behind your bum. If you're a round-backed rider and you're really tucking and you've got those glute muscles engaged, and you really don't feel any pressure, your triangle is likely doing this, and we want to lower the front of that. So we might have you think about putting a little bit more weight towards the front or the middle of your triangle. So that's the tip for today, something to play around with. Neutral spine is your pelvis going this way, and also checking your levelness from left to right. And we'll chat a little bit more about that probably in another video. But anyway, happy practicing and enjoy your day.